Welcome back to the Art Cafe. This is episode 105. In this episode, I had a chance to talk with feature animation director, artist, and the teacher, Blaise. We had a chance to talk about his animation and directing work at Disney, as well as his teaching role at Creature Art Teacher, the platform that he created to teach young artists. We also talked about social media and other general tips for artists. I hope you're gonna enjoy this one. Let's get it going. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm really am. It's we've worked together before.
Well, like you said, I mean, we've worked together, and I discovered you on Tembo, and I knew from that point on I was going to be following you or whatever. You're one of the best artists I've ever met and worked with. So
thank you so much.
And I'm still it's absolutely true, and you talk to anybody in the industry that knows anything, everybody knows you, and so it's cool that you and I have been able to kind of make our way after post digital domain and get back together again. I'm loving this.
Yeah, like that was one of my favorite projects, actually, because it was something completely different than I do normally. Like that was my first ever animation project. And so I was like, oh, wow, like I've never done it. I'll give it a try. I always try to diversify the kind of work that I'm doing. And it was cool. And the best part about it is that you are one of those creatives, you were directing the project. And I've worked with many different directors. Some of them are more visual. Others are more like story driven. You were kind of doing the both. But you're also such a great artist that you understood the whole process. So it wasn't like I would bring you a sketch and you were like, oh, I don't understand what's going on.
Right.
You were always like,
that was an advantage that happened for me, because I mean the way I just fell into animation. I wanted to be a painter.
Right.
And matter of fact, I wanted to be an illustrator for National Geographic. Mm-hmm. That was how I got started when I went to school back in the early 80s, mid 80s. I went to Ringling College of Art and Design from 1986 to 1989, and I never had any desire to do animation, so I trained in illustration and painting and everything else, and drawing, and so when I found out that National Geographic freelanced all of their stuff, and I wanted to be I want to be on staff anywhere. Right. I didn't want to. I had to freelance through college my whole way, and I was tired of freelancing, so I wanted a nice steady 40 hours a week regular paycheck at the end of the week. And then that's when I found out that Disney was coming along. It was actually Disney and Hallmark Cards were the two companies that were going to come and interview, and Disney was first. Right. I was going to interview with both, and Disney was doing this new internship type thing where they were going outside of animation schools and just trying to find schools that had good drawing and painting foundation courses, that sort of thing. And so that's how I fell into animation. So I had that drawing and painting behind me, and then I became an animator, and so that helped. And then I just fell in love with story as we progressed, and so I was able to kind of take all that stuff that I learned along the way and apply it to directing. So I helped out.
Right. Yeah. Were you always into art, like ever since you were a kid, or did it happen at some point where you were inspired to like, oh, I want to actually do this?
Yeah, no, I can't remember a time that I wasn't going to be an artist.
Gotcha.
So, I remember being 4 years old or 5 years old, and my parents saying, "You're going to be a commercial artist." I didn't know what the hell is a commercial artist? I don't even know what a commercial artist is today. Right. But it was a term that they used. You're going to be a commercial artist, and both my parents were into art. They didn't make livings at it, but they were both good artists. They could draw. My father he's sculptural as well and builds
right.
And so I was able to get a lot from my parents, and they were really supportive.
Well, that's good. So, for me, it was a little opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah. My mom said, like, you'll never be an artist. Like, I won't let you. Like, that's a waste of time.
Now, do you think do you think it's a cultural thing?
Yeah,
do you think
it's cultural. I think it's also because of the Iron Curtain and the fact that, everything was so backwards back then when I was growing up, that no one was expecting that's, like, oh, well, artists were people that would go to art schools, wear fancy hats and behave weirdly,
and be flamboyant.
And be flamboyant. That's about it. Like that was the street performers. That's basically. So it's almost, you would almost think that the artists were beggars at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I understand the sentiment. Like, I understand why, she would say that, but she's proud. So,
that's good.
So it's not like I told you, and you defied me.
So how did you end up in the States then? If is that how you had to develop your art further?
Well, I used to work in Europe for a while.
Oh, okay.
My career started in this Polish studio, People Can Fly. They actually were bought by Epic Games later on. That was like way after I left.
Okay.
So we did some video games there, and then I went to Crytek in Germany for another 4 years, and then I got a call from Naughty Dog. They wanted to hire me, so that was the big move. Back there. And then, like, literally a year later, we were working together.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd only been in the States for a short time before I met you.
Yeah, like about a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that big of a leap. That's crazy. Just going whole. Yeah, that's great, man. That's amazing.
It was like throwing yourself into unknown. A little bit of that, but. It was good. Like, to me, it was one of the tentpole moment, almost, right?
Yeah.
In my life.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that cultural change going from, what did you say, were you in Germany to Southern California?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Holy crap.
Completely different. Did you ever have a moment like that in your life where? Well, I guess going from college to work for Disney, right? That would be.
That was. There's big moments like that. There's, we've had, when the studio, being as deeply involved as I was with each studio that I was with, when we'd have these drastic changes, then not only sometimes it's not even a chapter that's closed. Now you're starting a whole new book in your life,
Right.
And I've had a couple of those happen to me, and when I went from college to Disney, that was a big cultural change for me. Mm-hmm. And such a huge, like, personal renaissance of just learning and being surrounded by the best artists in the world. And it's such a big positive. And spending that time through the 90s working at the studio with Disney, I mean, we were making the films that have defined an entire generation and are continuing to. Yeah, exactly. And it was crazy. I mean, we were all in our early to mid 20s, and we're making The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Pocahontas and Mulan and all these things, and it was just hit after hit after hit. It was like we couldn't do any wrong, and we just kept growing as artists, and we just thought this was going to last forever. It's like, look how great this is.
Yeah.
How could it end? And then within like 3 years, it all fell apart and the studio shut down. And that was our next big change in our lives. I never thought, I had been able to direct a movie by that point. I did Brother Bear. Mm-hmm. And we just thought, man, we're going strong. I'm going to develop another movie, and I'm living on this lake in Florida, and I'm living the great lifestyle, and everything's awesome. And then everything just fell apart. And they shut the studio down and laid everybody off. And my wife and kids and I had to just kind of pack everything up, sell the house, and move to California and make that big cultural emotional change and start over again.
So wait, all the all the Disney work you've done with, for Lion King and Pocahontas and whatnot, that was in Florida?
That was in Florida.
Oh, wow.
The way we started, the background for the Florida studio was they originally wanted it as a working attraction. So it was going to be an attraction. And so, I mean, we called it the fish bowl, and we were the fish. We had glass up on the walls, and 10,000 people a day came through and watched us work. And originally,
wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was crazy. And originally the intent was that we were going to do Mickey, Donald, and Goofy featurettes, little 20-minute cartoons that we could just pipe into the parks, and they could get some use out of them. And so before we ever had a chance to do any of that, when we started at the studio, they were going to release Dick Tracy. Remember the movie Dick Tracy with Madonna? And they wanted to do a Roger Rabbit little short in front of it. And so we did that. That was our first project. We did that in Florida. That was Roller Coaster Rabbit. And then the intent was to go back on and do these little featurettes with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. And while we were making that Roger Rabbit cartoon, they were finishing up The Little Mermaid and starting Beauty and the Beast. And Beauty and the Beast was getting behind, and they needed more hands. And so here's a whole studio in Florida. And they said, okay, well, we need some help. So we went over and did some sequences with them. Right. And that was a big opportunity for me, because that's Glenn Keane was a wonderful animator. He was my mentor when I was an intern. And then when we went on to Beauty and the Beast, he was the supervising animator of the Beast. And he wanted somebody in Florida to animate the Beast. And so he had me come on and did a whole bunch of sequences with him on the Beast. And so that really kind of advanced my career, but it also showed that we weren't just a studio that could do these little featurettes. We could do feature quality work. Right. And so from that point on, those featurettes went out the door, and we did co-productions on every single film. So it was Beauty and the Beast was a co-production, then the Rescuers Down Under, and then Aladdin. And then we went on, did Lion King, and then Pocahontas, and it just rolled from there. I mean, we worked as a partner on every film, and then once that developed to a certain point, then they realized, well, shoot, we're trying to get so many movies out, every one a year, and they weren't able to hit that mark. So then it became, okay, we can do our own movie, and so Mulan was our first film we did completely in Florida.
Gotcha.
And then we did Lilo and Stitch in Florida, and then we did Brother Bear in Florida, and then right after that they closed.
What was the reason they decided to close down the studio? Do you know any behind the scenes?
I mean, a lot of for me. I mean, I had, as a director, I was pretty deeply involved with budget and a lot of that stuff, obviously for each movie, and I know how much we were burning. How much salary, how much money we're burning every week just in salaries, because our whole studio, it wasn't based on picture-to-picture deals. We were based on multi-year contracts to hold people. And so if you don't have content for the studio to move on to, you're just burning money. Right. And so we were running out of decent content. Our studio, when we were making Brother Bear, at our peak on our project, and this isn't even the whole studio, this is just everybody that I had on the project at this one given time when I had the most people, I was burning, we were burning about $900,000 a week, almost $1 million a week. Yeah. And that's just in salaries. Right. And so, when you have a movie that's 84 minutes long and the movie and your budget is $100 million, that's over $1 million a minute that you're, and back then, and now it's even more than that. Right. And so and that's all because of salaries. And so when you don't have that movie, you're still burning that same amount of money. Right. Yeah. And so that's what happened. And so we had just gotten too big. They had gone through salary cuts and all kinds of stuff, and they were still there was a project that was coming on. Plus, I think Michael Eisner at the time, he liked having control.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they felt like the kind of the outlying studios were, out of sight, out of mind, a little bit out of control.
Right.
And ironically, we were the most profitable studio in Florida. We were putting out movies that were making the most money. I personally, not because I was there, but I think with the attitude of the studio, it was very family oriented. Therefore, morale was really high, and it really affected the product. I think we put out some of the best work, and but they wanted control more at home, so they decided we had a Paris studio as well. They got rid of the Paris studio, that went first, and then they dumped the Florida studio. We'd been there for 15 years, and then it was gone. And out of, I think it was about 360 people were at the studio at the time. About 10 or 12 of us were retained. Everyone else got cut.
Gotcha.
It sucked. Bad.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I'm curious if it was done in the same way that that Digital Domain dealt with the other Florida studio.
No, this one, Digital Domain was just
horrible.
I can't even explain that. I was supposed to get up. We were working towards a screening.
Right.
And
let's maybe give people a context what happened more or less without going too deep into it. So Digital Domain opened the studio it was West Palm Beach, right?
Yeah, in 2010.
Right.
Ish. 2011, 2010. I left Disney in 2010, and I wanted to come back to Florida. Found out that Digital Domain was opening a studio in Florida, and thought, okay, I can start over and make movies with a different company. And interviewed with John Texter and a few of the others, and ended up getting hired as a creative lead and a director for the studio. Chuck Williams and myself.
Yeah. I remember that.
And so we went and we spent a year developing 4 different ideas for films. And we spent 3 months on each project to get them up to either treatment form or at least beat boards. So we could, after that year, we could sit back and look at what we had and decide what we want to make. And it was a pretty wide variety of projects. It was the big epic coming of age adventure tale with Tembo. There was a small kind of buddy comedy with Birds of a Feather, and then there was a big sci-fi one with The Lightning Catcher, and then there was the art project, we called it, where the characters could go into the paintings and explore that world, and so we ended up deciding to, after that year, we decided to do Tembo, and then we were going to come back and maybe do one of these other projects, but and so we worked for two and a half years getting that movie off the ground, and meanwhile behind the scenes, even Chuck and I didn't know how badly John Texter was mismanaging the money and kind of paying Paul, all this kind of stuff. Just it was playing a shell game. And I don't think there's a lot of people that think he was doing it maliciously and lining his pockets. I don't think he was doing that. I just don't think he had ever failed before. I think he had gone to the edge many times.
Right.
Just managed to squeak by, and I figured this is how he worked. And it just didn't work this time, and it slapped him in the face. Unfortunately, it slapped everybody in the face, and a lot of people that depended on him got screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there we were. So there we were making Tembo. You and I and 120 other people had been working on this film for 2 years, and we were getting ready to go into production. And that Thursday, the Thursday before, I was in editorial for 4 or 5 hours getting the movie ready to screen the next day. And the next day we came to work and the doors were locked.
So bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. Normally you get at least a notice or writing on the wall, right? This was so abrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I got a phone call right before I went in, and from Pam Coates. And so I the world stopped at that point. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so, you have all kinds of panic that goes through your head, and you feel responsible for the studio and the people that are working with you and for you. And yeah, it was a horrible, I remember getting up there trying to talk to everybody. I couldn't get it out. I kept tearing up, and it was horrible. Big emotional day.
Yeah, I remember they locked the door. Like you wouldn't even you weren't even able to like initially go and grab your stuff even, you know.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I was working remotely, so I didn't take like the full blunt of the whole event.
Yeah.
But I remember getting a call about that.
Yeah. And there's so many people that, and they had cops there to make sure that people went in and just got their stuff and left, and it was pretty shitty.
Yeah,
it was awful.
Weird. That was weird. You know what's the most dismaying part about all that is that it seems like that's how things go right now with any other studio as well. Like you used to get at least like, okay, you know, we're either restructuring or doing something, and then you have enough notice to like at least scramble, you know.
Yeah.
At least scramble and get something else going.
I've discovered that, you know, when I started in the business, I was 19 or 20, and I remember these 30 and 40-year-old guys that were all, you know, they're always kind of just curmudgeons. And now that I'm 52, I'm trying hard not to turn into those guys. I remember, like, they're just so cynical about everything.
Yeah.
You know, life is great. Yeah, just give it another week. You know?
Just give it another week. That's so true.
I just saw, I don't know if you saw it or not, but there's a video. There's a video of a girl that she was working for Disney, and I guess she'd been at Disney for 4 years as a story artist. Mm-hmm. And she put this YouTube video out about why she was quitting Disney, and it basically came down. And I'm sure people are gonna listen to this and say, no, it wasn't quite that way. But the way I remember it is that basically she was having to do a lot of changes and her storyboards, and these are the things that stick out, and a lot of stupid changes, you know, from executives and things like that we've all dealt with in the past.
Of course.
And it's the reason I'm bringing this up is that I keep seeing these fresh, very idealistic, wonderful, like the world is great and I'm going to Disney and it's going to be awesome. And then they get there and and I think she said it just was like a corporate job. I was just doing storyboards for, you know, I thought for sure after 4 years, maybe I'd have my own project. And I was like, oh, wow, no. You know?
Yeah. It's very rare that you land on a project and you're just having a blast with everything you do. It's so rare. You know, I've been working in this industry since 2004, and I maybe had, even within my favorite projects, I would say only 2 projects. Like, let me count how many projects that were long-term, because I'm not counting like those short-term one-off illustrations, but the long-term projects where almost everything I've done was like, oh wow, that's fun, you know, like I'm having time to explore and having fun was actually, so the first one was three projects like that. One which was never made, it was just never made. I was working on it for a couple of months and it was just shut down. And that was with Robert Rodriguez. That was a lot of fun. I bet. That was my first film project. And then the second one was actually Tembo, where we just had a blast. Like we were just,
that was fun.
We're just sketching.
I enjoyed working on that movie every day.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like we were just flow from you know, different locations to different, you know, characters and develop everything in a nice way. I don't remember any of the paintings where I was like, I have to do this again. Like none of that, because we were just like going and always exploring different ideas. And credit to you, like not many directors I work with have that, but you're one of them where it's like, even if something is not fitting, like you have a way to extract what you want in a way that artists feels fulfilled, you know?
Yeah.
So that was like I had a blast doing that.
I'm glad.
And then the last one that I did, that I was just like from almost from the get-go till the very end, was the Ghost in the Shell with Rupert Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Because that was not only, you know, I grew up on Ghost in the Shell, which was awesome. I ended up working with my friends as well, like my really close friends, to collaborate on the same thing. So that was a blast.
And look how different that is from Tembo.
Right.
That's what blows my mind. Your ability to do that, it's just like, holy shit, it's just incredible the ability that you have to do that stylistic change. It's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I sometimes look back at my work and it's like I wish I had like this one little nugget that I'm like a perfectionist about. And I can just do it. I can do this one thing that no one can do as good. We know there are artists like that. Some of my friends and some of my favorite artists are out there that are just, oh my god, like I would never be able to do this. But then you look, but that's all they do. And they just, because of the amount of effort and time they put into one thing, it's just like impossible to catch up.
It's interesting because with young artists, that I always get the question of, should I have more than one style or should I have a single style in my portfolio? And I'm not sure how you answer it, but I'm just looking at your work. I mean, having the ability to go from style to style, project to project, and especially if you want to be on staff at a place where the style is going to change from project to project, I'm always advising people to try to broaden their stylistic horizons and that sort of thing and try to get it in there.
Yeah, I think, I guess it depends. Right now, there are opportunities where if you're a real specialist in one thing, you will definitely have less opportunities, meaning less different opportunities to do something really cool. Because it will all come down, okay, you are this one guy for this one specific thing. But then you can make a mark doing that as well, because you might be hired for a project that they need this one specific thing and you're just perfect fit for it,
Right.
So if you can draw characters and environments and, and backgrounds and whatever, that's great. That means anyone who contacts you, like, oh yeah, I can do that. Right. But it also means you're probably not the best at all those fields.
Exactly.
Whereas, like, I am the best character artist, and then anytime they do character, you are just killing it. So, I don't know. I feel that I might be wrong about it, but I'm looking at the landscape, how it's changing, how even changed since we worked. Like, it's just dramatically different since we worked together. And I think it's going, like, this whole idea of whether you are more of a generalist or a specialist, I think that's splitting, but it's splitting into two completely different routes. Where like if you want to be in the industry and work in entertainment or design or whatever, you have to, like, it's almost expected, I would say, that you would be somewhat a generalist, especially if you want to have diversity of projects. Versus, like, if you're specializing, I feel like the influencer, social media route is becoming more and more attractive for artists. Yeah.
Well, yeah, to me, I see it as the age of the artist and where they are in their journey and in their career. You start out as a generalist, you end up as a specialist. That's just the broadest, simplest way of putting it. And I, that's so. And then it's always young artists that are coming to me. So I was like, just broaden your horizons, go in there, and then if you can do more than one thing, then once you're there, you can start to specialize.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because, like, when you're young and you're trying to figure things out, it's like, you might like doing characters now, but you might not like them a year from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things are like constantly moving and changing all the time. Like even with yourself, like, you wanted to be illustrator and you ended up being animator, and then you're a director. So,
and what's cool now is with the job that I do, with the business that I have, if I feel like talking about animation, I'm going to talk about animation. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about oil painting. And the next day, I'm going to talk about character design. And then, and we can jump all over the place. And it's pretty. It's fulfilling to be able to do that. I like it.
Yeah. So what made you change to, I mean, you're in a completely different spot right now than when the last time we spoke. So
well, this is what happened. So I had a couple of things happen to me before I met you. So the whole reason I ended up at Digital Domain, I've told this story. I tell this story in a lot of my talks. it's a downer, but you know, I was at Disney in Florida for 15 years. During that time, I was married, had, you know, the kids and everything, and my wife Karen and my kids Austin and Dustin. Once the studio shut down, we said, okay, we're going to do this together, and we moved to California, and we're going to start over. And we got a really cool house, and kids got enrolled in school, and we're starting this whole life, you know, completely different. And I got a new deal to develop a new movie with Disney, and so I was doing that. But during that time, Karen got diagnosed with cancer, with breast cancer, and so and we weren't able to beat it. And so, you know, she fought it for 2 years, and trying to get a movie and take care of your wife and take care of your kids. And, you know, eventually I was trying to make the movie at the house where I had a studio. The guys were coming in, and it just became too much. And then eventually, you know, Karen passed away in my arms on March 11th. Actually, almost it's almost the anniversary today. Right. And I was just completely, I mean, we've been together for 20 years. She was the love of my life. And I was completely devastated. It was the first time that I just didn't really care anymore about art, about animation. And then, but at the same time, I was directing a movie. And so
sounds like an impossible task, honestly. Like, I cannot imagine the stress you were going through.
It was absolutely impossible. And I started drinking a lot and just dealing with it with alcohol. And it was bad. And I eventually went back to work 2 weeks after she passed. But it was just, I'd sit in the parking garage and just bawl my eyes out, you know, and then go in and try to work. And then as soon as I'd leave work, I'd go right to the bar and, you know, get hammered so I could go to sleep. You can't sleep. And so you just get stuck in this horrible cycle.
Yeah, like numbing yourself to pain. Like trying to numb yourself of everything.
Yeah, and meanwhile, my kids are broken, and just you completely lose your identity. And so eventually, it was probably like a year and a half, 2 years of going through this, trying to make the movie. And it was just falling apart, and I just had no passion in it. And so John Lasseter and Ed Catmull took me aside and said, "Hey, man, we're taking you off the movie." And they said, "We want to keep you here. You know, we love your work, we love your art, we think you'd be great in visual development, all of that." And it was like instantly, I just knew I'd fallen so far, and it was time. You know, I said, you know what? In my mind, I'm going through all this stuff, and I said, you know, it's been 2 years. I've got to pick myself up, and I've got to start over.
Right.
And you know, because in my mind, there's only really two things that really identified me. It was my job as an artist at Disney and filmmaker, and then my family. Yeah. And both have just crumbled, you know. And so you're trying to you have no identity. You don't know what you're trying to do. You're heartbroken. You're all this stuff. Your soul is just, you know, gone. And so they said, "We want to keep you." And I said, "Nope, I quit." And they went, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa." And I said, no, I'm not mad at you guys. As a matter of fact, I do the same thing. You know, I was screwing the pooch. I wasn't doing it. And I said, no, I need to start over. I said, I've got to find my kids again. I got to find who I am again. And I got to quit. I'm going to go back to Florida. And this is all like within seconds of them saying, "Hey, we're taking you off the movie." Yeah. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to start over and go back to Florida. And so we hugged it out, and everything was great. And I went back to my office, or actually went home that night and sat on my bed and went, "Oh shit, what did I just do? You know, I got this mortgage, and how am I gonna, you know, make this work?" And so I put the house on the market as soon as I could. I remember going into work the next day and cleaning out my office and starting to go through all that process. And I had an email from a buddy of mine that forwarded it to me about this studio that was starting up in Florida, which was Digital Domain. Right. Oh shit. Okay. Wow. And so I called them up the next day, set up an appointment. I flew out, and Chuck and I did. and we interviewed, and that whole thing, that's how I ended up at Digital Domain. So I went back to California, got the house sold, and packed everything up, and moved to Port St. Lucie, and we started Digital Domain, and that's how that got started. And then, and so that whole window, how that went, and so when that all
Very
fell apart,
with it.
yeah. So when that fell apart, that's when I went, okay, I can't go through this anymore, and so I'm tired of putting my fate in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
And so then I decided, all right, and I sat there and I started thinking, what can I do? And I started thinking about having. At that point, I had like 25, 30 years of experience in the industry.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there thinking, and I started thinking about Glenn Keane. Glenn Keane was my mentor, and he was do you know who Glenn Keane is?
Rings the bell. He's
he's
artist for me.
He just got last year he got the Academy Award for Deer Basketball with Kobe Bryant.
Okay.
He was the director and animator of that short, but he was also, he was the supervising creator of the Mermaid from Little Mermaid and the Beast and Aladdin and all these iconic characters. And so he was my mentor when I came up. And then as I became an animator and grew, it was really because of him giving me and teaching me, giving me all this wonderful work and then kind of guiding me through it and elevating my game as I went. And I thought, man, I can, we live in an age now. It's not the early 80s anymore. I can share stuff on a global scale with YouTube and the internet and all this stuff. And so I just started thinking about being able to share those experiences on a global scale. And the other thing that was pissing me off was that colleges had gotten so expensive. Art school is, $45,000 to $55,000 a year.
It's insane.
Yeah. So we thought, we could at least put stuff out there that can supplement artists and young people that maybe can't afford to go to school, and maybe it'll be something that can help them out. And so that's how we started this business that we're doing now, and that was 7 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that was you get those two seminal moments in your life that led you to screw this.
Yeah.
Enough
exactly.
Is enough.
Yeah, and I do remember too I was thinking about my wife Karen and just thinking, okay, I want to do something that she'd be proud of, because she was always, really giving and loved working with other people and stuff like that. So that's where that was the whole inspiration behind it. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
And it's grown like crazy. We've sold in over 150 countries now, and I think in the last 3 or 4 years we've traveled to, I think, 18 different countries or something like that, teaching, and it's been great. It's been awesome.
So the platform you're teaching on is the one you started. It's called Creature Art Teacher, right?
Creature Art Teacher, exactly.
Is there anyone involved in it, or is it just you and I guess anyone who's helping you to do the work?
Well, it's myself and my business partner. I have a 50-50 partner that I've been working with. His name is Nick Birch. And the way he was a Ringling grad as well. He graduated in 2002, wanting to go into the animation industry, and that's when it kind of fell apart. And so he changed his direction and just really went into business for himself, doing web design and that sort of thing, and also became an instructor at Ringling. And his class wanted, he'd bring in different speakers to his class. And so they asked me to come in and speak. This is why we're at Digital Domain, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And that's how we met. And he and I just really clicked. And so when Digital Domain went under, I went back to him and said, hey, I want to design this website. I've got this idea for this business and yada, yada. And we just started working more and more closely together to the point where we formed an LLC together and just became partners.
That's cool.
So, yeah. So, and then we have another employee that works for us that basically is writing different code and creating apps for us and making sure the website is robust. And then I have my son that works for us as well, that he edits all my videos and photography and all that kind of stuff. So it's been great.
Yeah, the stuff you guys are producing is pretty awesome. It's pretty.
Oh, thanks.
It's pretty awesome. I've been following it for a while, because I remember, there was this one moment where we worked together. It all ended up where it ended up, and I was like, oh, it was a bummer. And it was one day, I think it was one of those days when I was sharing some of the work we've done for Tembo. I was like, I wonder what Aaron's doing right now. And I looked you up. I was like, oh wow, like you have a school now, and like you're not working in films. Like what's going on there? So it was like fascinating.
No. Well, it's funny, since then, every once in a while something will pop up, and I did a little bit of work for Blue Sky here and there. I did some stuff for Paramount here and there, and like these commercial projects and stuff. But we really, I managed to kind of squirrel away enough money that I could live on that and really just focus on creating content for this website. And hopefully eventually, we'd reach a tipping point to where it was providing enough income for us to actually live on, and then we could really make it grow, and that's where we are now. And the whole mission statement for it in the beginning was, making art education affordable for everybody. And so we started thinking globally, looking at some of these countries that were kind of the lowest economic denominators, what can this country that, doesn't make a lot of money per capita, what could they afford, and so let's price everything to them. That way everyone will afford it, and we can go global a lot faster. And so rather than going high on prices, we went low on prices, but got 10 times as many people.
Gotcha.
And we grew super fast that way. So that was cool. And so, and it's made us popular because people like it when it's cheap.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah.
When Gumroads came out, that was a couple of years ago now. That's where like the amount of like the cheap, affordable education came through. Because there was like I remember all the way till that point. I mean, honestly, no one was doing anything. Like there was maybe some satellite area places like Nomon or
Animation Mentor.
Yeah.
That was there. But even and I love Animation Mentor. They put out great stuff, and then you get a lot of one-on-one, which is hard to do. So, but even that was
hard to do.
Yeah, it is. But it was still fairly expensive. Not everyone could afford it.
Right.
And so it was our idea. It's like, okay, why don't we, if we can take out the one-on-one aspect of it, and just basically create these video books is what it would be.
Right.
Where I sit down and I just vomit about a certain subject. Just vomit everything I know about it. I'll talk to you about the fundamentals of animation, or I'll talk to you about what I know about character design or whatever. And so we would create these, 15 or 20 hour courses where I just talk for a couple of days and draw. And then we put it out, and we realized, if it's a digital piece of merchandise, and so it will never be out of stock, and it can forever, and that it was pretty exciting for us to kind of pursue that.
When do you think it picked up, like to a point where it's like, this is it? Because like I remember this with our company. I think when did I start Learn Squared with Andrew and Ash and everyone? I think it was back in 2015. It's been 5 years now, and I remember when we were building up for a release. It's been, I think, about a year of work altogether to okay, we need a website, we need this, we need that, we need a bit, like there was just so many things, and like so many things we've done wrong from the very get-go, because none of us is a business person either,
Right.
And there was this uncertainty right before the release where you were working on something, you're spending all your free time, not allowing, taking away time that we'd normally spend with family, friends, and whatever, or even on your personal projects, on the okay, is it gonna work? So we've been building this up, and eventually, like, okay, it actually works, but it's always slow. Like it always starts slow because you're a new,
but it's this kind of trajectory,
right?
It does increase, and that's when I saw it starting to. I remember the first day, or the first year or so. During that first year, is like, okay, let's see if we can get $20 in sales today. $20. Let's just get $20 in sales. and then that number grows, and then you get to the point where, holy crap, we've done enough business that I can pay my mortgage, and I bought all my groceries, and I paid my bills, and and I have enough for taxes, all of that, and so there's a certain point where you see it's growing at a rate where you go, okay, I think if as long as we steer the ship right, we continue, don't get cocky. That's the one thing. Stay true to why we were doing this. That's the other thing. Make sure that the customers, the students, they are number one. Listen to feedback. We would do that as well, and just kind of be cautiously optimistic and just keep going forward. Then we knew it was going to take off, and we've tried to do that, and it was going like this for the first few years, and now we've leveled off, but we still have a nice steady climb. And one of the other things that we're doing is that we've started in the last couple of years is bringing other people in the industry, bringing them in, and kind of widening the net. There's only so much
so you don't have to record the videos yourself all the time.
Exactly. And so bring in people that are experts in whatever field they're in and let them teach. But for me, I want to have working people. It's not, I don't want it to be like, when we went to art school and you have this graphic designer teacher that's teaching you graphic design that he did in the 60s because that was the last time he was in the industry.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we're working and we have working people teaching. And so, which goes back to the other thing that I'm still trying to do is get at least little small animated projects done. So I'm doing a project called Snow Bear with Nick, and which is a small animated project that we're doing, and hopefully that'll get us something.
Still an animator and director at heart. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, look, like it seems like in a way we're doing very similar things, even though like we only crossed paths once to work together. But like from that, I guess I had different seminal moments in my life that led me to where I am right now, and obviously there is always room to improve things as we go. But I would say, it's all sounds very similar. When we started Learn Squared, it was like, okay, like we wanna do the high-end education, like the best of the best, something that I would pay all the money in the world to do myself when I was a kid,
Yeah, exactly.
And we did that, and it's growing, and it's it's becoming like now when I work with people in the industry, when I go to occasionally I almost completely stopped working in the studio, like going to the studio when I'm working on films. I'm trying to do it as much as I can from home. This is like one of one-offs that I have right now. I'm working with this production designer that I worked with before, and I love him. Like I love him to death. It's like one of my favorite people. And so I'll go to work on site for a bit. And what's surprising is like you talk with other artists, and they all know what we're doing, and like it's such a validation because you hear it from students, and that's great. Like hearing stories from students, and I'm pretty sure you get that too, where you hear this, like someone reaches out and it's like, thank you for all the work you do, I took your classes, whatever, now I work as an artist. I just got a job. Right. Yes. And I was like, okay, it works.
Yep. Or you're getting out there. Like this time last year, I was in Moscow and doing a talk there, and so many kids came up afterwards and said, "Hey, the only reason I came to this is because I follow you." And there were hundreds of kids. We went down to I did a thing for Wacom all through South America, and every place we stopped, we filled the audience because they're all followers of us, right, through the website or on social media or whatever. So you're getting out there. That's cool because the message is being heard.
Yeah, the way you guys been doing it is great as well. I mean, it's very genuine. It's very you. Like anytime I look at your feed, it's like it's just Aaron.
Cool. I'm glad. Thanks.
So I actually need to try one of your classes. There's some other questions that I have in regards to that. Okay, so going a little back.
I just lost you.
Oh, can you hear me?
I hear you. Yeah.
The camera.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I have two cameras. I'll cut this part out. I have two cameras, one for Skype and one for recording, so we'll be fine.
Gotcha.
I'll just look at the time. Okay, 49 minutes where it's happened. Okay, cool. Yeah. So when I look at your profile, it's like it's all you. It's like, okay, that's the same guy I've been talking with on Skype. Yeah, it's I think as long as you stay very genuine and true to yourself and never bullshit people, I think one of the things I've noticed, people smell bullshit from afar. I think
they absolutely do.
Yeah, like
it keeps me on my toes, because I don't know how you feel as an artist, but one of the greatest things I've learned through doing this is just being able to kind of verbalize what it is that I do. Because there's a big part of me that, when I sit down, sure, I can kind of explain what I do, but there's going to be a time where someone figures out I'm just a fraud, that I really don't know how to draw that well, or I really, it's that kind of thing. And so it this kind of thing does keep you on your toes, because it really does force you to go, oh, wait a minute. No, I do know this.
Yeah.
And this is why I know it. And I've got it. And it forces me to verbalize the rules of what I think about and this and that and what everything else. But it just builds a confidence in that way. And so when you can do that, and when you're honest about it and you truly want to share it, then people do pick up on that and they come back.
Yeah, I agree. And like someone could say there's an argument to tell, okay, you have your illustrators that would do pencil art, markers, and then digital art, and eventually like 3D would become like, well, now it's VR, right? Now VR is going like people are crazy about it. But one of the like underlaying thing is like how you translate that, or how you translate your ideas into pictures, and I think that never ages.
It doesn't, and I that's why I try to do things that I get so many people that come to me and say, hey, can I take this course? I don't know how to do I don't know how to work digitally. I can only work on paper. I'm only 12 years old. Can I still take this course? And I'm trying to set everything up to where, yes, you can follow along on paper. You can follow along on your iPad, Photoshop, whatever it might be. I'm creating a course right now, as a matter of fact, on, just how I think about lighting,
Right.
So many people can't understand, in how you think about light coming in and hitting an object, and how you create shadows and highlights and all that kind of stuff. And so, I'm doing it digitally, just out of ease, but people can follow along in any way. So we try to generalize as much as we can, and on subjects that it really doesn't matter the medium as much as the thought process. Yeah.
I think the medium. I think people get caught up with the medium too much. I had this debate with some of the friends that I work with, where we're talking about the speed of work. Like, what is the optimal speed of work? Like, is it that important that it can be fast versus like what's the advantage of doing things faster? Because obviously, okay, look, you can set up your 3D scene, right? And so like that takes away thinking about perspective and lighting, because it's just so much easier to do it that way. But does it give you advantage for the creative process of coming up with lighting that is actually good, right? Because maybe in the process of drawing, you're more careful with your decisions, and that means that you might come up with something that's eventually better, versus if you're just like setting up hundreds of ideas. Like I don't know about you, but like personally, I don't like working on projects where I have a task and then I have to make hundreds of versions of it. It's like, what's the point, Right. I never see a point of that. Like I understand making a couple of versions where you're trying to explore, especially if you're trying to explore something, you're not sure what you're doing, and there's no description of it, and you're just like, okay, like what is it? Let's explore. That's a different thing. Yeah. But Like,
it is a different thing when you're exploring. You're drastically changing things,
right.
And so, for me, having a director that's having you do that, to me, is just a director that's unsure and
right.
doesn't know it until. And I always tried to at least know in my head what I was looking for. And the other thing I like to pride myself on is just letting, there's a reason why we hire the people that we hire, and it's the expertise that they have. So I don't need you to do 1,000 different versions of something. I'm
right.
going to trust you to come up with the top 5 in your head, and I'm going to know that those are the top 5.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. Like, when you're hiring a person, like, your first initial idea would be like, okay, I'm hiring this person for a reason. Like, I'm not hiring a random artist to do versions for me because I'm unsure. Like, I like
right.
the direction this person is going with in terms of what right. kind of quality of work or what kind of style of work they create or what kind of design language they use.
Right.
And that's resonating with me, so that I can, trust them that they will come up with something that's really good.
Well, you get a lot of other great side effects from that as well, because you go the other way, you're going to burn a person out,
yep.
and you're going to drop the morale. You do it this way, when they know they're trusted, morale goes up, creativity gets boosted, the want to contribute more goes up. You get there's so many benefits that come out of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and let's face it too. I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the industry that I've worked with in the past that they feel like it's part of the job to explore every possible thing before, just to know that we did it. We did our job. Right. Whereas, you know what, that version, and that version are all just as good and could work just as well.
Right.
It's just a matter of opinion. And so, once it gets within the 10%, 20% world, it's good. And I don't use good enough. I'm not saying good enough, because great, you can have so many different versions of great and for a specific purpose. And that's the thing that used to drive me crazy, because part of the reasons why our budgets were, just went through the roof at Disney was because it just became part of the culture to do iteration after iteration after iteration before they'd pick something, especially in story,
right? And
just go and just make it, and that's one of the things. I don't know if you're familiar with Klaus and the movie Klaus that was out on Netflix, but that's one of the reasons that, first of all, the film is absolutely stunning, directed by Sergio Pablos and his crew in Spain. And but one of the things, and then I looked up, I wanted to see what the budget was, because it's one of the most beautiful 2D animated films I've seen, I think, since Sleeping Beauty. Mm-hmm. And I looked it up, and the budget was $40 million, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the $200 million and $150 million that the other studios are spending. And it was and I went to James Baxter, who was one of the animators on the one of the directing animators on the project, and I said, "How the hell did you guys make this movie for $40 million?" He goes, "We didn't make it twice. We just made the movie.
You just made it once."
Yeah, it's breaking that culture of, hey, we don't have to do iteration after iteration, and it's ridiculous.
One of my favorite
that always gets me on a tirade.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite. I mean, I was talking about 3 of my favorite projects. Robert Rodriguez works exactly the way you're talking about. He just makes it once. Yeah. And sure, there's going to be spots here and there that once you get it out, you go, oh shit, we got to make an adjustment here and there. But it's not every sequence. And I've just worked with people that just can't make a decision until they don't. I had, one of the guys I worked with on a project, I remember I would animate a shot, and through the entire life of the project, I never once got a shot through the first time, because when he would issue the shot to us, different animators, we'd never get any real clear direction. He was like, I'm not quite sure. Then you go off and you do it, and he'd go, oh no, now I know what I want. Now, once you see how he doesn't want it. And I swear, everybody ended up doing their shots at least twice. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's Yeah, I mean, I understand the process of like, okay, we're creating something, and then you want to iterate upon that one creation, or maybe a few of the ideas to find out which of them going to fit the overall arcing story, or you know, or emotional build up or whatever. Yeah, and then you like iterate until you get to a point where it's like, yeah, this is looking great. And sometimes you want to just iterate even more because like you feel like, you know what, it's looking great, but I know if I put a little extra time, it's going to look so much better. But
see, that type of iteration is different to me than you can have this, or you can have this,
right,
or you can have this, or you can have this. This one I've shaded a little bit different this way. Here you can, it's just like, come on, you know.
Can you make a blue version and a red version?
Yeah, right. See, that's the kind of stuff that just drives me nuts.
Yeah.
You know. So
yeah, I don't like projects like that personally, where it's like, I understand a few ideas and maybe testing a few colors real quick, but working few days on one thing just to figure out, okay, like out of all of those shapes, we want nothing, and you know what, the first thing you've done, that's probably works the best. It's like, why we are wasting, you know, we're kind of wasting time.
Now, I mean, there are times you'll go around full circle, but as long as it's not the standard process, you know. Yeah. And that gets me excited when I look at platforms that are coming out now, like the streaming platforms with Netflix and Amazon and everything else, with the ability of creating content, animated content.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to force. First of all, it's a new renaissance, I think, of not just CG animation, but 2D animation. You know, it's a whole new world as far as what the content can look like and feel like and everything else. And then we're doing it on much tighter budgets, which I think is going to be really cool. It's going to force creativity. Mm-hmm. Then there's short subjects. I mean, all kinds of really cool stuff that the whole streaming platforms have brought to the industry.
Yeah, and you know, we were talking about social media and that whole route. I feel that's like that's even a bigger, you know, it's like a wrench that was thrown into the whole cog of, you know, the whole mechanism of like how art is created and what are you doing it for? Because like social media and you as an artist making a living by being there for people, that just made it so that none of the art forms that has been created so far that people like slowly were deeming like, oh, this is outdated, like no one does it that way anymore, check out this new software, let's pick it up, this is the most important thing ever, like, oh, I can render faster now and make, you know, stuff in 3D look like it's a painting. None of that matters anymore, because some you know, if you follow, even just go on Instagram and start like searching through what kind of artists are out there, you can find people that are extremely successful in almost every single field of art, and they make a living, and they're actually, some of them are doing way better than if you were working in the industry for the biggest films, and you know, whether you're a director or whatever, like that. I mean, we all hear stories about YouTube kids, right?
I know.
Yeah.
It's funny. And you know, the social media is such a huge part of my life and my business now. And, you know, before I left Digital Domain, I had a Facebook page that I, you know, talked to friends on and stuff. But I didn't know what the hell is this Instagram thing, and what's, you know, never used Twitter or any of that stuff. And so since then, it's just become such a big part of it. And the ability to drive business in different directions and well, first of all, share art and share ideas, and then letting that, you know, drive business as an end result is really, really cool. Yeah. I really love it.
Yeah, it's
a good way to stay in touch with the people that are following you.
Yeah, it's such an outlet for creativity too. You know, I had my sort of like, I was going back and forth personally on what I feel about social media for a while, but I think what I've learned over time is like the best approach, at least, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, is like treating a social media as an outlet for creativity, like meaning expressing yourself as a creative, but also looking at it as a business as well. So like it all depends like what your goals would be. But if you want to make a living through social media outlets and not be a company man, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
If you want to grow it that way, there's obviously certain things you have to treat it as a business, because otherwise you,
as a business.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. You have to be honest. You have to be. I think the more open you are, the better off.
Right, and comes back to the honesty we were talking about before.
Yeah, there's so many artists that I've met that there's two things. First of all, you don't want to share too much of a project you might be working on, and I find that, and that's old Disney thinking. You know, everything was so secretive, and and you couldn't reveal anything. You couldn't talk about it.
Right.
I remember when social media first started coming out, we had these meetings about, okay, Facebook is coming out. These rumors are coming about this and that. We got to lock everything down. And I remember raising my hand saying, why don't we let stuff leak out? Why don't we, or purposely not leak it out, but put it out there? Why don't we build an anticipation for this project that shut up, Aaron. Okay, we're going to go on to something. And that's what's happening now. I mean, you can watch projects, you can watch movies being made as they're being made, and you can see the process. You can see the sausage being made, and it builds an audience before the film is even out there. And which is one of the things, it's one of our motivations behind like the Snow Bear project that we're making. I do live streams where I'm animating and I'm talking about the shot that I'm making, and it's all going out, on all my platforms, and people can ask questions about how we're cutting it together and how are you going to solve this problem. I don't know yet. We haven't gotten there yet. And so they get to see, the whole process, and that's really cool.
Yeah. It's I don't understand. Like, and another part that's interesting is like sometimes studios are very reluctant to, like, when you share your works, like, oh, take it down. It's like, all right, you don't want me to promote your project that I worked on.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want me to make people want to watch it and make money for you. Like,
exactly.
Sometimes
it's such an old executive way of thinking. That's what it is.
I almost sometimes feel like there's this marketing department that is completely detached from the creation of the project, right? And as long as, a lot of times they have great ideas, but we look at the film posters, we all know that it's a regurgitated stuff most of the time, right?
Right.
But then like every now and then there are some really brilliant ideas that come out, and there are some really creative people that work in marketing. But as you said, there's this old executive way of thinking, like, oh, like, take it down because we have a marketing plan for it that almost never comes to fruition.
It's true. I get excited thinking about, from a marketing standpoint, the young people coming into the industry now with the way that they manipulate social media. And then once they get into those marketing jobs, what kind of ideas are they going to be coming up with, when they're in their 40s and it's going to be crazy. Yeah,
I'm actually excited because now young people who are growing up exploring social media, different platforms, they understand like how fast things are changing, the dynamics of what makes people excited. Like, get those people to do marketing. Like, obviously you want to have smart people who have experience and understand, a little bit of psychology maybe, but the young people have really, really good ideas all the time and are really creative about it.
It's amazing how much I've learned in the last 5 years. It's just, I really went from, I could draw in Photoshop to this whole world that I live in now.
Yeah.
And it's all because I'm picking it up from young people, that I associate with, I interact with, and my business partner, Nick. But it's all stuff that, it's like through osmosis. It's a slow process of it all just kind of permeates into you because you're doing it every day, and as I'm going through, all the different artists I follow on Instagram or whatever the platform might be, you see things that kind of eke their way into your psyche, and it changes the way you might think about something. and it just slowly evolves, even without you knowing it, you're evolving.
Yeah. It's exciting times for sure. It is. It's really exciting times.
Whether it's a musician, artist, whatever it might be. I mean, this is one of the most exciting times in history ever.
Yeah. Because like I remember even a couple of years ago, you would meet with artists who are up and coming. They want to become, or either up and coming, they're working on some smaller projects here and there, or they're like fresh out of school or fresh out of the classes that they took online, and and they're like, they always ask the same question, like, how do I get my foot into the industry? And it seems like we are on the path where, do you want to work in the industry? Actually, there's so many other avenues where you can grow as an artist and be true to yourself, and well, don't get me wrong, it's still going to be a lot of work, but you're you're in control of it. Like, you fully control your outcome at that point.
Exactly. It just takes the work. And so that's the down flip side. This is why I always tend to sound like the grumpy old man, is having been, growing up in the 70s and 80s. I call it, the generation now, it's the American Idol generation, I call it. It's all I have to do is go in and sing a contest. Yeah, I can be an overnight success, but you can't blame this generation, because I used to have to go. I had to go to the library to get information and go through the Dewey Decimal System to find that book, and then you had to read the book. But now all I have to do is go beep, pop, beep, boop, 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 when you got the information right there, and so everything is instant. The only thing that you can't do instantly, at least in our career, is build a career and be a good artist.
Yeah.
That no matter what you do, it's going to take a lifetime of work. And that's what's hard for a lot of young people to accept. One of the number one questions I get from, 18 or 19-year-olds, what do I need to do to become a director? And God bless them. If I was young and coming into the animation industry, and that's all I'd been thinking about my whole life, and I loved movies, then sure, that probably is, I'd have the same question. But there's really not a realization of the time needed to just to grow and become good.
Yeah, it's one of those. Don't you think it's one of those questions where it's like, if you have to ask this question, that means you're not asking you're not asking other questions that are way less grandiose, that will lead you to a conclusion what you need to do if you just ask them first instead. Like, hey, how I become more productive, or how I organize my time to produce more work, how I not get distracted, how do I need to, well, obviously, like, you need to be interested in movies to direct the movies. Like, otherwise that's just not going to work.
More often than not, they're usually students that they see a studio as an opportunity. They have, I got movies I want to make. I got movies in my head, make them. And so they see a studio as an opportunity to someday they're going to want my movie and we're going to make that movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get into that studio somehow. And now I got to work to become a director so I can get my movie made. And they're missing that journey.
Yeah. Like, in order to be a movie maker, make movies, take your phone out and start filming.
I was out at CTN this past November, and I had a student come up to me, and he basically was asking me that question about wanting to direct, and he was pretty aggressive about it. I could tell he was frustrated. He hadn't gotten the answers he wanted. And he goes, and by the way, don't tell me I just need to be a better artist and I need to draw more. And everyone's already told me that. I would need to know, how do I get to be a director? I said, well, you do need to draw, you need to work harder as this and that. And he kept cutting me off and saying, look, everyone's already told me that. I want to know, how do I become a director? I finally I got so frustrated. And I said, what you need to do is shut up. You need to shut your mouth and just listen for one time. I'm getting heated now.
Yeah.
I said, just shut your mouth and listen to me. And he just goes, I'm sorry. I said, and I said, I've already told you several times what you need to know. You're just not listening. And I think this is your problem with everybody else.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think there's a lot of kids out there that need that. They need a little,
little spanking.
Little spanking. Yeah. But there's a lot of kids out there too that are just, course. They're so, and that's the norm. They're so just appreciative and listen and work super hard, and that's been the really satisfying part of what we do, because that really is the norm, that there's just so many hardworking kids out there. Yeah. And you get to see them grow. You get to see them arc, and you see where they were 4 years ago compared to where they are now, and
it's fascinating.
They've grown as a result of what you've been talking about and what they've been gathering on the internet and everything else. So it's cool.
It's really cool to see when you give an advice to someone, and then they either check in or you check in with them a couple of years later. It's like, oh wow, like you actually took the advice, and here you are, exactly. And here you are.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I agree with you. People just sometimes have to shut up and listen. There's a reason. I mean, most of the artists, like yourself, you can tell when someone is genuine. Like, what's the other reason to do this? Like, you're giving your time that you could easily spend, hanging out with your family or working on your personal projects, to talk with a person, and like, you don't have a nefarious reasons to lie to a person or be dismissive. You're there for them. Right. Like that's your choice. Yeah. You're doing it because you like doing that. You like sharing your ideas and helping others. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And most of the people like to do that. Like, we like to be helpful because somewhere down the road in our own career, we had a person like that said one or two things that we actually shut up and listened, and and that was okay. I get it. I might not get like all the details, but I understand what you're saying. Like, or even just the idea, like, just listen. That by itself can dramatically change your outcome.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to do a 180 degree to change my life. No, like, over a long period of time, even if you change yourself by 2% in one direction, that route over time, just, you're becoming a completely different person because of it.
Exactly. You change and you morph in the most subtle of ways that you don't even realize that you're doing.
Right.
So many people get hung up on, I need to have a style. Well, no, your style is going to evolve. It's going to happen. You don't even know it's going to happen.
Yes.
There's this talk that I give. It's the talk I give mostly, and it's basically just a talk of my career. I call it persistence of vision. And persistence of vision is a term that we use, and it's for film. It's the idea that, when you're watching a film, you're watching 24 individual images that are flying by so fast. Each image kind of persists on your brain and blends with the next one to create motion. That's what we see. But I thought it was also a cool metaphor for just as an artist, having this persistent vision of wanting to create. And as long as you keep that persistent vision, just that, it's going to take you in directions that you never expect. And so one of the things I always tell everybody, because usually my audiences are between 18 and 21 years old, I'll say, I remember when I was sitting there where you guys, and I at the time, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And there were times that I didn't, but I still had this, I just knew that I was going to work towards whatever it is that I wanted to do. And it was the process of working towards it that you would shift your direction just a little bit. For instance, wanting to go work for National Geographic. Well, I had this persistent vision of, okay, I'm going to work for National Geographic. Well, that door closed. And so I went, I'm going to go this way to go to Disney. And so, I started out as a little kid, living in the swamps in Florida, drawing animals out in the wild, and ended up, this guy that was directing at Disney, and through that's what I wanted to do. It was just all these little forces changing every step of the way, just like you said. And so that's what happens.
Yeah, because you evolve as a person. What you think you want to do now, that might be now and then maybe for the next few years, but over time, as you're trying to reach that goal, you realize, you know what, there's actually this other thing that is even more exciting. But I wouldn't learn about that if I wouldn't go on this path and really try to achieve it. And I wouldn't have this time I've spent, getting to that point.
I mean, for you, as an example, I mean, as a 12-year-old, let's say, I'll just pick a number out of the air. As a 12-year-old sitting in Poland, did you ever think you'd be sitting in Los Angeles?
No way. Even as a 20-year-old, I wasn't even imagining that. So
yeah. So it's just, that's, I guess it goes back to another thing too that we haven't really mentioned is so many kids feel like, they have to have it figured out. I've talked to so many that are like, I just don't know what I'm panicking. My parents are telling me I need to know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, how old are you? Well, I'm 17. And I just I just want to shake them and then hug them and shake them and then hug them because you just need to be patient, and just let the journey take you where it's going to be.
Yeah. I'm gonna have a friend of mine on one of the next episodes. His name is Jama. You might have seen his work.
I know Jama.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we were in the Philippines together.
Oh, perfect. Well, you know him better than I thought. Then that's awesome. A small world then.
Yeah.
But his career, right? Like he haven't started doing any art until he was like 34 or 35 ish.
Yeah.
It's
and he's awesome.
It's one of the best. Like you look at his works, like how the hell are you doing that?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just like a testament to like it's never too late, honestly. And it's not like, oh, if you don't have it figured out by age of 20, then you're done. Like no, it doesn't work that way.
I completely redefined my career at age 42. So
yes,
it just happens. It happens.
Like the age is just a number next to your, like it's just a number on your passport or on your ID. Well, obviously,
it's a willingness to work. That's all it is. No matter what the age, whether you're 17 or 18 or 42 or 52 or 102. It's just the willingness to put in the time, and just knowing. I think you do get wiser as you get older. You know that as long as you put the time in, things are going to happen and things will evolve. Yeah,
age gives you this weird, or not weird, this trade-off of ability to do things quick versus being wise not to do them quick but do them right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Cool. We've covered a lot of grounds on this one. A little hiccups with the connectivity, but we made through. I wanted to leave this last part of the podcast for some of the questions that I've gathered from fans of yours. And there was a bunch of
them.
So
you actually got some responses. That's good.
Yeah. I honestly, that's great. That gives me an idea. A, people love you to begin with, and then two, people actually know who I am as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool.
In this podcasting environment. So, all right, let me see what's out there. There's a lot of them. It's really hard to find out which are the best. But I'll start with something easy. Was Lion King your dream project?
I don't know that it was my dream project, but at the time it was. Every project that I was on at Disney, everyone's asked me what was my favorite project that I've ever worked on. And the corny answer that I have is that every project at the time is my favorite one. I had the ability to work on, some great movies during the 90s with Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and The Lion King, Pocahontas, and Mulan, all those. And so none of them were bad films. Mm-hmm. And so every film had my... it was a favorite of mine for a different reason. I can look back on my history of being a part of the making of these films, and every single one of them it sits in my heart in a different place for a different reason. And The Lion King, I loved making The Lion King because I'm such an animal artist at heart, and I still am. And my whole reason I went to art schools because I love to draw animals and I wanted to do it more.
Yeah.
And so working on the Lion King enabled me to really dig deep and, dig into the anatomy and the physiology and the movement and everything else to try to create a believable lion, and then create a character that you could feel for, and that could emote on top of all that. So that's why I loved working on that film.
Yeah, the whole topic of wildlife art is actually something I wanted to talk to you about, but I think that by itself is a topic for another day. Like we should honestly do it again.
I can talk about that forever. Yeah. 'Cause that's the other thing too that really drives me. Now I'm finding that creature art teacher is the business that's I just have that. First of all, I want to train people, but now it's providing me the income to go and do the things that I always wanted to do as a little kid. So like I just got back from Africa in October, and we went on safari for 10 days and chased lions and all kinds of great stuff.
And
so
you've been working with the guys, with Kristen and
yeah. So David Levy and Expedition Art and Ian McKay. Because you guys, was it last year or the year before, you guys did that interview over in Europe? Yeah,
we did a little podcast, little art cafe podcast at THU. That's what. Right. Well, I mean, I knew a little bit about the Expedition Art before, but that's where it's like, oh my God, you guys are doing like a saint's work over there, So that was crazy. That's by itself is like a separate subject. I actually want to get Manu on one of future episodes to talk with him about that. And just
he's awesome.
He's such an amazing person. Oh my God.
Yeah. We're getting together again in May. We're going to be in Montana.
Oh, perfect.
Doing chasing more wildlife.
Yeah. Give him a hug from me. Give him a hug from me. I try to talk with him every now and then, but
you should go with us one of these times. You should go. You'd love it.
Yeah, I've never been to wilderness, so I feel like I would be a liability.
No. You should have seen when we were in Africa on this last trip. I mean, it was regular African safari, but then at night we did something I'd never done before, and we went out and we would hunt with the lionesses. We'd go be right with them and taking down the game, or they were taking down the game, but they were used to us enough that we could hunt with them, and they would take the game down, and it was crazy.
That sounds intense.
It was very intense.
That sounds really intense. All right, another question. The first one was from Instagram. This one's from Instagram as well. Should you sacrifice your youth for art?
Sacrifice your youth for art. That's a funny question. It depends on if you feel like creating art is a sacrifice.
Right.
So, I mean, throughout my entire youth, that's all I ever wanted to do was art. So, and I wouldn't be the artist that I am now had I not done it in my youth. So I don't understand. To be honest, I'm not sure I quite understand the motivation of the question, but that's my answer. If you love art, and if it's, to me, creating art is like breathing. I can't not do it.
Yeah.
And so, for me to think that art was a sacrifice in my youth it doesn't compute for me.
Yeah,
it's part of me. It's like saying my arm was a sacrifice. Having an arm was a sacrifice in my youth.
It's such a pain in the ass to have an arm.
Exactly. So yes, you should. Because if you're truly an artist that loves to create art and you just can't live without it, then it's not a sacrifice. It's like eating food,
I guess the other angle to look at it would be, maybe like the outside perspective. Like maybe that person have someone who's like, why you're like sitting in front of a computer instead of like coming in and drinking beers with us,
Well, that's where I figured the motivation was as well. I mean, there's a lot of times I gave up, just that, hanging out and partying with friends and doing all that and painting instead or animating. And, I never regretted it.
Yeah.
I never saw it as a sacrifice.
It's like, okay, maybe it's cool if you're for that specific crowd that you're hanging out with them, but I mean, it's your life at the end of the day. Right. Your life, and what matters is what's your pursuit? Yeah. What makes you happy?
For me, I mean, as long as the pursuit is from is from a good place, as long as you're not chasing the dollar.
Yeah.
And because I am a firm believer that, the dollar will be there if you're following your heart, especially when it comes with the entertainment industry and art. If you're just constantly chasing the dollar in the entertainment industry, you're never going to be happy.
Yeah.
You'll always feel like you're underpaid. You'll always hate the deadlines. Whereas if you're just loving what you're doing and finding things in what you're doing that you love, then, like I said, the money will show up. It'll be there.
Yeah.
And you'll never want for it.
I agree 100%. Like the money, like your passion to doing the right thing matters more, because when you do that, then you're gonna work more likely work on projects that you love working on, instead of working on the projects that make more money and you hate doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
But then again, the passion of wanting to do it out of that will bring in money.
Yeah.
So, so you'll be all right.
Yep. Do you have any daily routine that helps you be more productive?
I don't know that it's necessarily be more productive. I think I'm as productive as I can be. My routine has loosened up quite a bit since I've become more independent.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time where, I would be up at, 6:30, 6 o'clock, 5:30 every morning, have my breakfast, do whatever I was going to do, be in the car, drive my 45 minutes to work and start my routine there and do my 9 or 10 hours at work and head home. My work is so not that anymore.
Right.
I might not leave my house for 3 days at a time, but, I still like to sit around the fire at the end of the night and have a drink or two several times a night or several times a week. And so depending on how many drinks that night will determine when I wake up the next morning. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I'm at that age now where that's what I do.
Yeah.
And so, I might get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I might get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. Who knows? And but either way, I come downstairs. I usually grab something to eat, something small, and usually I have a game plan in my head of what I need to accomplish for that week. I try to think of my work in weeks at a time, and so I try to hit whatever my mental quota is. I try to do that by the end of the week, and so I'll just get into the studio and start working.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I try.
I'm sorry. Just real quick.
No, go ahead.
I actually don't usually work. Actually create art for more than 5 hours a day, and beyond that, I'm just like, okay, I'm done, and then I
right.
go off and do something else.
Yeah. There's certain threshold of productivity. Like there's only. Well, I guess it depends on like what kind of productive work you're doing, but there's only certain amount of hours you can be on one thing, where after that you just like, oh my god, like this is not really coming together anymore, unless you're like in that flow state that happens sometimes where you're just going and you're like in it, and anytime someone comes in, you're like the worst enemy is like, get out, I'm being productive now. Right. But yeah, it's like I don't think the amount of hours you're gonna do in a day is a good measure of whether you're productive or not.
It's interesting for me. It depends on the type of work I'm doing. So if I'm doing animation, I can animate for 10 hours.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I do. If I'm on a project, I'll work at least 9 or 10 hours a day when I'm animating. Mm-hmm. When it comes to painting or illustrating, I have a hard time going any more than 4 or 5 hours, and then I'm done.
Speaking of animation, that's going to be let's wrap it up with this question. It's going to be the last one from Twitter. What's your thoughts on AI being able to add in between frames almost flawlessly, and how would you use it in an animation?
Well, I think it depends on. I think it's awesome, first of all, and I think they use that on Klaus. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think I still think the human element, the artist still has to do enough of the drawings in order for those in-betweens to not make it become looking, fluid and not fluid, but underwater.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So I still think it needs to be broken down quite a bit. But I mean, if it saves, you from, instead of doing, 500 drawings, you only have to do 300 drawings, and or 200, then it saves time, and why not? For me, I love it. It goes back to a more philosophical question for me, because there's the art of animation, and then there's animation, which the end product is the art, which is a story that you can sit down and be moved by. And I want to get to the story that you can sit down and be moved by faster, if I can, because I just want to get there. Do I love being able to have a stack of paper and being able to flip that paper and see it and move and have that? Of course, I think that's awesome. But it's, to me, in this day and age, it's archaic. And I love being able to sit down with TV Paint, which is my animation software, and draw and see it come back, see the animation playback instantly and make changes that way on the fly and get my projects done a lot faster. Yes, I'm willing to give up that, the physical art, but at the end I get the end product a lot quicker. Yeah,
but there's also something to say about like the craft that goes into being hands-on versus leaving everything to the hands of the machine. I think it's very prevalent when you look at some of the more newer animation, when you watch any of them, like especially anime. Like I'm more into anime than animation itself, so I noticed it in anime a little more. I've been recently like rewatching classics from like Ghost in the Shell and Akira. Those are my like all-time favorites, but also like Studio Ghibli, Miyazaki work. And just looking at when you like, even just exploring the animation itself frame by frame, when you look at how things are done, they're so imperfect, but as they flow, they become like very organic and really, really like artsy.
They're hand drawn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Embrace the medium. That's what we always used to say. And so, the question being, what do I think of AI and doing the in-betweens? To me, I think it's great as long as it's not as long as it's not detracting from the art form.
Right.
And I think we suffered a little bit at Disney through the 90s in the cleanup department. The people that were taking the rough animated drawings and cleaning them up, the mentality of that department became such that they didn't want the width of a line to wobble, let alone the line. And it became the most expensive department during the process, and it really jacked the budgets up, because here you had 100 people that were just chiseling every single drawing, and maybe would get 3 or 4 drawings done in a day, and whereas Bob and I, my co-director Bob Walker and myself, we would always preach embrace the medium. It's hand drawn. Let it wobble. It doesn't matter. We're not detracting from the story. We're adding a little human element in there.
Yeah.
I love watching things that are rough animated, because you get to see the soul and the thought of the animator in there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Watching Ghibli, like I was surprised how they do stuff. It was like, oh my god, everything frame by frame. And then you watch Akira, it's like all the explosions and bike scenes. It's just like it's just so intense and insane. And then they would even go like the helicopter stuff or some of the other flames would be like literally acrylics, like the whole shot painted frame by frame. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah. I remember back in the early 2000s, I went to Studio Ghibli when I was in Tokyo, and went in and I met with Miyazaki and talked with him for a little bit, and there's they're working on paper like this big, and a lot of times animating, and it was just insane how beautiful the end product is compared to what they were the supplies that they were using to get there. But it's all classic. It's classic gouache and watercolor painting for their backgrounds, and just stunningly beautiful, and not even doing full animation most of the time because of their budgets. They're putting things on 3s and 4s. But it just blows your mind. It's stunning.
Yeah. Comes down to that, the amount of, it's a long process, but You know,
It is.
it's not an instant thing. Not an instant gratification that comes from that kind of work. You have to like put in the work to, but then it's worth. And once you see it, it's like it's worth.
Put the time in where you need it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can wrap it up here.
All right, man.
Yeah, it's been amazing. We've covered a lot of topics. It was awesome to actually catch up with you, see where you're at and everything.
Not only has it been awesome, but I'm glad that we just kind of we've done it and we kind of broke the ice. So now, let's get together. You know, I'll be in LA. I don't know if you ever go to CTN or Lightbox or anything.
We're actually going to be at Lightbox. Me and Andrew, we are definitely going to be there.
Oh, good. Well, yeah. I'll be at Lightbox as well. So maybe let's get together and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. We should plan for that.
Okay.
Let's give you a shout out. Is there anything you would want to, plug in and talk about? I know you've mentioned you have a new course that's coming out or already came out.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm creating a new course right now on my approach to how I light everything. That's the other thing I want to reiterate is every course I try to put out there, I preface it with my approach to blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So, because there's 1,000 different ways to use 1,000 different things. And so it's really just kind of my thinking and how I think about it. But I've got my approach to lighting and the way I think about lighting within the view space of a composition. And all that's going to be available at creatureartteacher.com. Mm-hmm. That's my website. Yeah, and right now there's tons of stuff on there that we've built up over the last 5 years. Everything from traditional animation to traditional art. I've got watercolor courses and charcoal courses and all kinds of cool stuff. Oil painting course along with digital painting courses. Mm-hmm. Animation, character design, storyboarding, all kinds of stuff.
That's awesome. And where can people find you outside of the creatureartteacher.com?
On all of the other platforms, be it Twitter, Instagram, what am I missing? There's a couple. Anyway, it's all Aaron, or YouTube. It's Aaron Blaise Art.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so Aaron it's all Blaise at Aaron Blaise Art.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for everyone who's joining us, listening this, and going through the whole episode. Obviously, rarely happens that. Joking. But Aaron, thanks a lot for your time, and yeah, that was great.
Brother, it was awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Mwah. Cool.
All right, man.